back to the Gridiron Expert. The College Football Playoff Committee released their fourth set of rankings in preparation for the final week of the regular season, and as always, we're going to break down these rankings, analyze them, share whether we agree or disagree with the committee's decisions. And I will say this is the first week out of the four rankings they've released that I actually have some major discrepancies. And we'll go ahead and start with the most important top 10, and the top 4 remained unchanged. Actually, the top 8 remained unchanged. Your top 4, if the season were to end today, would still be Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and then Michigan. So, of course, Alabama playing Michigan, Clemson playing Notre Dame. And I will say that after watching the Week 12 games, I think Notre Dame was the most impressive team out of those top 4 squads. I know the rankings weren't going to change. I didn't expect the top 4 to change, but Notre Dame looked the most impressive and had the most impressive win over the 12th-ranked Syracuse Orange, beating them, I think it was 36-3. Alabama struggled for the first half against the Citadel. The Clemson started off slow against Duke before winning 35-6. And then Michigan at home only beating Indiana 31-20 and actually trailed that game at halftime. So I think Notre Dame looked like the best team in the nation coming out of Week 12, but I'm perfectly fine with the top 4 staying the way it is. Georgia and Oklahoma, the two teams on the outside looking in, but still have a chance to make some moves. Georgia still has a chance against Alabama in the SEC championship game, assuming they don't lose to Georgia Tech in the final week of the season, which I don't think they will. Oklahoma has a tougher road there, having to beat West Virginia on the road in the final week, and then if they win that game, go to the Big 12 championship game, and more than likely have a rematch against Texas, who should take easy care of Kansas this weekend. They got LSU and Washington State rounding out the top 8, and this is where I start to have some issues. As Kirk Herbstreit mentioned, if you watch the College Football Playoff Rankings show on Tuesday night, he mentioned that LSU is basically irrelevant right now. The fact that they are sitting here at number 7 makes absolutely no sense. Yes, they are a solid team. They did better than I expected them to be. But they are not going to make the college football playoff. I don't see any scenario where they will make the college football playoff. I know some people dream big and can hope that they can do that, maybe sneak in there. We've seen crazier things happen, but it's just not going to happen. What I'm more disappointed in with the committee's decision is the fact that Washington State did not jump LSU and maybe didn't even jump Oklahoma, who allowed Kansas to score 40 points on them this week. They only won that game 55-40. We're talking about a Kansas team that we know how bad they've been. They did show improvement this year, and of course just hired Les Miles as their new head football coach, but the fact that they allowed them to score 40 points, that's inexcusable. Washington State, however, puts up 55 points in the first half, annihilates Arizona, and I know it's just Arizona, a team that has struggled mightily this season, another team that we didn't expect to do as bad as they have been, but they should certainly have jumped LSU, who once again is just taking up space right now. And I think after the end of this week, after the end of rivalry week, assuming Washington State takes care of Washington, the 16th team ranked team in the nation, I think they'll be able to jump LSU because LSU has A&M, number 22 in the country, on the road. But once again, LSU has nothing to play for. They're not going to the SEC championship game. That's already set in stone. They're not going to the college football playoff. So I'm very, very disappointed with the fact that Washington State did not make a jump there. And I have no loyalties or biasness towards the Cougars. It's just the way I see it. I have no biasness or hatred towards LSU. That's just the way it should be. Washington State should have made a move this week, and the committee made a mistake there. And to me, this almost is a shot saying that Washington State almost has no chance of making the college football playoff. We'll touch on that here in a little bit. One of the bigger storylines coming out of these playoff rankings was the fact that Central Florida jumped Ohio State. They were number 11 in last week's rankings, annihilated Cincinnati, of course, that's where College Game Day went, and then jumped Ohio State, who narrowly beat and was lucky to beat Maryland 52-51 in overtime this past weekend. Maryland should have had that 2-point conversion and upset the Buckeyes, which would have ruined their Big Ten hopes and their college football playoff hopes. Nonetheless, their hopes are still alive. But Central Florida jumped them, and I agree with that. That was a very impressive performance by Mackenzie Milton and Josh Heupel and the entire UCF squad there taking care of Cincinnati. They're number 9 in the nation. They're not going to the college football playoff. We know that's not going to happen, but they're certainly in line for a New Year's Six bowl game, assuming they can win out with a game over South Florida and then probably over Houston in the American Athletic Conference championship game. Ohio State. Big date against Michigan coming up, number 4 versus number 10. The winner of that going to the Big Ten Championship to play number 19 Northwestern, assuming they take care of business on Saturday. Can Ohio State slip into the playoff? If they were to beat Michigan, because you have to remember, this game is in Columbus. Ohio State will have home field advantage. If they win that and then beat Northwestern, you're looking at a one-loss Ohio State Big Ten champion. Their lone loss coming to a mediocre Purdue team by, 29? That's going to be a really tough spot for the committee to be in because I'm assuming Alabama will beat Georgia. That's going to be a heck of a battle. Clemson should win out. Notre Dame, if they beat USC, they're in. So who gets in for that fourth spot if Ohio State takes care of Michigan? Would it be Ohio State? Would it be Oklahoma if they win the Big 12? Could it be Washington State if they win out? That's going to be something the committee has to figure out and really has to touch on. And I think that's where you're going to see the most controversy down the stretch. So if you want to see some chaos, you need to be pulling for Ohio State this week. And we're going to come back to Washington State, as I mentioned, but as we're looking through the rest of these rankings, one thing that's continued to catch my eye, and one thing that I do agree with on the committee, is the fact that head-to-head still matters. Head-to-head matchups and head-to-head results still matter in these rankings. It doesn't matter where you are, if you're 25 and 24, or if you're number 1, number 2. But if you look, you got West Virginia, who took care of Texas a few weeks ago. They're still ranked ahead of the Longhorns. You've got Washington, who beat Utah early on in the season. They're still ranked ahead of them. Notre Dame still ahead of Michigan, and rightfully so. The Fighting Irish still undefeated. Played like the best team in the nation last week. Michigan struggled, and still a one-loss team, too, in that one loss coming to Notre Dame. But head-to-head results still matter, and I agree with that 100%. That's a huge role. That's to me, the best way to distinguish if one team's better than the other. Let them play, and that's what the committee's looking at, and that's obviously a huge selling point when they're ranking these squads. Further down the list here, I don't believe Texas A&M should be ranked, and I have no biasness and no loyalty to the SEC or anything like that. I'm not a hater of the SEC or any conference for that matter. But there's no reason that Texas A&M should be ranked in the top 25 right now. Certainly should not be ranked ahead, I think, of Boise State. Was Boise State a one-loss team, a two-loss team now? I think they're 9-2. Huge date coming up against Utah State, one that will play a huge role in the Group of 5 New Year's Six bowl berths potentially. But Texas A&M lost to Auburn, who has struggled mightily this season, was number 20 when that happened. Their past 2 wins have come against UAB and Ole Miss. UAB this past week, Ole Miss 2 weeks ago. Not necessarily powerhouses and not necessarily blockbuster wins and resume-boosting wins. I disagree for A&M to be in the top 25. But once again, I think they did that. If you've gone back and looked at the rankings, it's very common for the committee to throw in some random SEC team there towards the end. They do that just about every week. And that also makes this LSU game, I think on Friday night or Thursday night, a lot more intriguing for LSU for a rank versus rank matchup, number 7 versus number 22 in College Station. Just makes it a little bit more better for ratings and for everything like that. Just anytime you have those 2 ranked squads going up instead of 1 ranked squad, 1 unranked, makes it look a little bit better. So I disagree with that, but it is what it is, and A&M has a solid chance to prove me wrong if they can pull off the big upset over the Tigers in College Station. Group of 5, as we mentioned, always got to talk about them. Once again, they gave them some love last week. They're giving them some love this week. Got UCF in at number 9. First time I believe they've cracked the top 10, except for towards the end of last year, I think it was. But they've cracked the top 10. First time that we've seen a Group of 5 school jump a Power 5 school. So that's a major accomplishment for Group of 5 schools everywhere, and obviously for Central Florida, who's been craving that attention and certainly deserves it for the way they've been playing. 23 straight wins and taking easy care of Cincinnati, probably one of their toughest tests of the year. You go farther down the list, though, Utah State, Boise State, the winner of that game is the biggest threat to Central Florida. If they were to slip up on the road to South Florida or slip up to Houston in the American Athletic Conference Championship, the winner of that Utah State-Boise State game this weekend is probably going to go to a New Year's Six bowl game. So they're not in the clear yet. Central Florida is not in the clear yet. But they certainly look like they're in the driver's seat. They control their own destiny. They got to win 2 more games, and they're going back to another Peach Bowl or Fiesta Bowl, wherever the committee decides to place them. And I would certainly love to see that, and I'd love to see them go up against another SEC school. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But that Utah State-Boise State game should not be overlooked. It's going to be a late-night game, I think, on Saturday night, and you're certainly not going to want to miss that. Later on, as we get closer, because this is the last week of the regular season, then we're going to hit conference championships. And then right after that, the day after conference championships, boom, we're going to know our top 4. We're going to know our New Year's Six bowl games. And we're going to start getting ready for postseason play. As we get closer to time, though, we'll go ahead and break down the college football playoff scenarios, who could get in through which way, if they win this, win that. We're going to break all those down. But I keep coming back to Washington State because I think they are the most intriguing team in the college football playoff rankings right now, in the hunt for the college football playoff. I think they're the most intriguing team. You've got your basics up here. You've got your top 4. The paths for Georgia and Oklahoma are fairly simple. But Washington State has the most complicated path and just the most intriguing in my mind. They're a one-loss team. The one loss coming to a very mediocre or below-average USC team in very controversial fashion. That happened early on in the year. But Washington State, one thing you've got to keep in mind is look at who they've got to play the rest of the year. Number 16, Washington. If they win that in the Apple Cup, they maybe should slip up a few ranks. And then they'll play in the Pac-12 championship game against Utah, assuming they beat BYU, which I think they will also remain ranked. So that's back-to-back ranked wins for Washington State to close out the year on top of a decent resume over some mediocre Pac-12 opponents. If some teams slip up ahead of them, Washington State certainly has a very solid case to be a one-loss Pac-12 champion to try to get into that top 4. Now, if Michigan takes care of business the rest of the way, and so does Alabama and Clemson in their respective conference championships, that's going to be your top 4, no question. But something's going to happen. We've seen chaos happen. It's bound to happen. And I think your best bet is going to be seeing Michigan lose to Ohio State this week. Not saying that's going to happen, but I think that's your best bet for chaos. And that's Washington State's best bet for maybe some crazy things to happen and maybe make their case to try to wiggle their way in there and crack the top 4. And I would love to see that. In my opinion, Mike Leach is my Coach of the Year pick for what he has done with this Cougar squad. Gardner Minshew, what he has done is phenomenal. I know we're talking a lot about Washington State, but as I said, I feel like they are the most intriguing team in this top 25 right now, maybe one of the more intriguing teams in the entire nation. So here you go, your top 25 college football playoff rankings entering week 13, the final week of the regular season. It's hard to believe college football is almost over, but we've still got a lot of football left to be played, a lot of rivals going at it this week. You get your trash talk going. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then after that, conference championships, big games, Alabama, Georgia. You've got Oklahoma or West Virginia, more than likely one of those two squads. The winner of that game going up against Texas, should be Texas, assuming they beat Kansas. A big Big 12 championship there. Big Big 10 championship, Michigan or Ohio State coming up against Northwestern. That might even be the week where we see more chaos, and that's going to be giving the committee one day to decide who their top 4 will be for the 4 teams that will be playing for the national championship. So get ready. It's going to be a heck of a week of football. Everything, the big games kick off this Thursday, Thanksgiving night, carrying all the way through Saturday. So as always, please go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert and always here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on the Gridiron Expert.